The key that we've learned is don't present a new customer with a blank slate, because that slate will likely stay blank for, longer than you want it to, which creates churn risk for us. So we'll, aside from doing sort of the typical, all right, let's walk you through and show you how to do everything, we'll also spend time with each customer getting to know and talking about, well, what are your business objectives?
On today's episode of Rise, Grind, and Repeat, we talked to Andrew from Lighthouse PE. They help businesses with proximity marketing to help fuel their loyalty and profits. Let's dive right in. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Rise, Grind, and Repeat. I'm excited. After doing some research on the company, you guys are very technology forward, and I think we're big on geofencing, geotargeting, geolocating, anything that can bring value to customers and whatnot from a digital mobile front. And that's, you'll get into a little bit more, but sounds like quite a bit of what you guys do. And before we dive too much into it, love for you to kind of introduce yourself. Who are you and kind of what's your backstory?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Andrew Steele. I'm the CEO of Lighthouse PE. My backstory is sort of a long and windy road. I moved here to Arizona back in 2014 after spending 17 years in the Silicon Valley. So I moved out there right in the middle of the first .com bubble, fast times in the Silicon Valley kind of thing. And, went through a couple of cycles, boom and bust cycles, worked for some big companies, started a couple of companies. And in 2014, ended up moving out here for two reasons. Number one, I was ready to get out of Dodge, get out of California. Yep. But my family's here and I wanted to, to be closer to them. So not too long after I moved here, I just through mutual friends connections met a neurologist who had been working on this little mobile app for him to use in his practice. Long story short, we ended up co-founding a company called Beck and Call together, which is a mobile communication platform for doctors, mainly for use cases when they're on call and patients and hospitals need to get in touch with them rather than using a call center or answering service. Our app basically automates all that communication. So we started that in 2015, and fast forward, we're in discussions now to exit the company to another company here in Phoenix. So that'll hopefully be a good news story all the way around.
That's awesome.
It is. It's been a heck of a ride, and healthcare is a really hard industry to do technology in.
It's very archaic. That's fair. We just had a little one 4 months ago, and just getting the different. I haven't been in the hospital too often and stuff like that, but it's even just getting the bills from the different departments, and there's communication issues on all fronts. It seems it's just the whole communication and the way just billing and the admin side of things on the healthcare side. It's very archaic. I think there's tons of opportunity from a technology perspective, which I think would bring better healthcare to everyone and ultimately could help reduce the cost. Overall, because I can't imagine how many hours are being poured into manual looking over bills, sending them out. And I think there's a huge play for automation to help just make better healthcare coverage for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if there's a sort of long-term benefit, if we want to call it that, to COVID in healthcare, it's that it really has forced the issue in a lot of ways for healthcare organizations to adopt more technology. And I think that's going to be a lasting impact, which will be a good thing.
Yeah, I think I always try and find the positivity in things. All the negative that happened with COVID, I think that's the biggest appreciation that I have is it kind of expedited the technology adoption. But also, just the creativity that I've seen businesses come out with in terms of changing business models, how they're making money, and policy, how they're adopting technology. That is the coolest thing that's happened from COVID. And once we get past it, it's going to be interesting to see how much sticks, how much gets pushed forward more quickly in terms of technology.
Absolutely.
So Lighthouse PE.
Lighthouse PE. So I got involved with the business, with the team early last year in April. And you want me just to give you a little background, the backstory on Lighthouse PE? Because I think that sort of leads into why I'm here.
Yep.
So the technology Lighthouse PE platform was developed inside of another agency here in town called Off Madison Ave.
Okay.
And the genesis of the technology and what the technology is designed to do came out of the agency's work with clients in the casino gaming industry. And the sort of the simplest explanation for the problem statement was, how do we get our best players to come back to our floor more often rather than going to one of my competitors? And how do we get them to spend more money? The casino business model is no secret. How do we get them to spend more money on our floor? And so that very simple problem statement was really the kernel that grew Lighthouse PE. And so, the agency has been developing the technology for the last couple of years. And I think probably in late 2019 or sometime in 2019, I think the light bulb went off that, hey, we've built something here that could be bigger than just one of the tools in our agency toolkit. And so they started to think about, well, what if we took Lighthouse PE, took the platform, took it out of the agency and built a company around it. So take this technology we've developed, create a SaaS platform company and grow it like that. COVID put the brakes on that plan for a little bit, but I got involved, as I said, last spring to help them develop that strategy. And as we were working through that process, we sort of mutually came to the conclusion that it made sense for me to join the team full time. At that point, I was a consultant to the agency. Okay. So I joined full time last October, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
No, that's amazing. I think worked at a couple agencies in my past life, and had a couple casino clients, and understand the how to get people back more frequently, more often, spending more in each of their visits. So I mean that technology is huge, and I think it's more applicable even outside of the casinos, which it sounds like you guys have obviously expanded into other industries. But I think that's the biggest struggle for most brick and mortars is they see the benefits of all this digital marketing and the trackability, but in terms of getting people in, being able to track that, whatever that may be, I think there's a big gap. And I think a lot of brick and mortars are trying to figure out, how can I target people based off where they're going? How can we get them back? So would love to hear more about how does that technology help?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that when you sort of dip below the Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000, the brick and mortars don't typically have either the technical wherewithal or the budget, to do things that brands like Chipotle and Best Buy and Burger King are doing, to leverage this kind of technology. So, Lighthouse, the Lighthouse PE technology is really built around the principles of behavior design, which is, I'm not an expert, but sort of a socioeconomic discipline that had a big hand in building big consumer brands like Instagram, Facebook. OMA, Off Madison Ave, the agency, has built an internal discipline around that as a service for their clients. And so, Lighthouse PE really is a manifestation of those principles in a technology platform. Basically, the way that we apply those principles is our sort of our main first party data set is location. So we look at location using a mobile device. We track devices, not people. So we're keyed into the unique device ID for a mobile phone. And we look at not just where are you now, but patterns. And our sort of hypothesis or our principle behind Lighthouse PE is that location is a manifestation of behavior and preference, especially when you look at that, patterns over time. So it might, it's not just where are you right now, but where were you before, and when was the last time you were here? Or how much time have you spent here? All kinds of data, individual data points like that, we stitch together into patterns, and then the platform basically takes action based on the criteria that our customers build around those patterns. The primary way we capture location data is using GPS, the onboard GPS of the phone, but the platform also supports beacon technology. Okay. So, when you go inside of a building, your GPS becomes pretty much useless for, location-based type targeting like we do. Obviously, beacons are, sort of fill that gap and are a lot more precise. So if you're like in a casino, where you have applications that, could range from, I want my pit boss to know when someone that's an A player in his book of business pulls into the East parking deck. We can do that with beacons. Yeah. Or, if the line is too long at the buffet and my poker tables are empty, I can target players inside of the facility using beacons to say, hey, maybe give an offer to play poker for the next 30 minutes and wait for the buffet line to go down. So there's all kinds of pin or point of location data and location patterns that feed into the interactions that Lighthouse PE triggers. The way we do that primarily is through push notifications. Okay. So to a consumer, to an end user, Lighthouse PE is a B2B brand. We're not a consumer brand. So they'll just know that they're getting a message from, their casino or their med spa or their favorite restaurant with something. It could be just communication, could be content, could be an offer. But all of those pushes are sort of what that's the manifestation of Lighthouse PE doing the work, behind the scenes.
No, that's awesome. I love that. And that's one of my questions was, how do you deliver these communications? Is it through digital ads, through banners, or is it push notifications? But it seems like the push notifications, and even after hearing that, there's so many areas of opportunity where, like you said, if you have a bunch of people in one area and nothing over here, you can incentivize kind of breaking it up and help with logistics and workflow. And I mean, there's a lot that can be done in order to just help operations overall.
Absolutely.
Overall, yeah. I think a big topic right now, I mean, I love everything that you're talking about. I think I'm all for, how can we get inside the consumer's head a little bit more and understand who they are, what they want, so that we can deliver relevant messages that they're going to like, rather than just serving random stuff that's like, well, that doesn't even make sense to me. But I think consumers want it, but there's also the side of privacy and all of that. How are you guys weighing that in? I'm sure it's a question that comes up as you guys are pitching the product as well. That it all sounds great, but aren't my consumers going to get mad because we're collecting too much data? Yeah.
So it's a great question, and it does come up all the time. And there's a couple of ways we address that. Number one, of course, everything from a consumer perspective has to be opt-in, right? Those are the rules for, the app stores. And so for Lighthouse PE to be able to engage with a consumer through our customer's app, that consumer has to opt in both for location data as well as push notifications. If they opt out of either of those, then we don't track, we don't touch. The other thing I think speaks more to our business model, where there's a lot of the backlash maybe isn't the right word, but a lot of the negative press right now around privacy and location has to do with companies like Facebook that use your location data to monetize you with third-party advertisers. We're a completely different business model. Lighthouse PE is an engagement and retention tool, not a customer acquisition and advertising tool. So all of the data that we collect, number one, we don't sell it, like platforms like Facebook and Instagram do. But number two, we don't even share that data between our customers. So we are very strict about how we use and handle the data that we collect on behalf of our customers, such that we're only using it to enable Lighthouse PE to work.
That's awesome. I think that's the right approach. And I think the reason why there is the backlash, the negativity, is I think there's a lot of brands that have leveraged the data probably abused a little more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A great word to use. Wanted to dance around it, but yeah, have abused it. But I mean, being in digital marketing for 8-9 years, I mean, I see the conversations that happen, and it's, if it's on the table, it really comes down to, how does that business operate? Are they okay kind of going over those lines and abusing it? And I think that's where this new iOS update has come from. I think consumers are speaking up more. I think consumers still want the personalization, but without the abuse of the data and to be monetized.
Yeah, I think what you just said is the key to it all. Is if the consumer feels like they're getting value for sharing the data, then they'll share the data. I think that, we've certainly there's some generational differences in people's willingness, but, we look at our casino customers and, there's players in their 80s and 90s that, love to gamble. And because they love their casino, they want to know anytime there's something going on or there's an offer or anything like that. So they opt in. We see across our customer base anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of end users opt into both. So it's a pretty high, percentage of the overall user base. And that's a significant enough portion of our customers' customer base for them to get really massive value out of using Lighthouse PE.
Yeah, I think there's tons of value, and like you've kind of already communicated, I mean, people in the location, getting them over to different areas of the business, whatever that may be. So that's communicating while they're there. What are you guys doing? As you mentioned, you try and bring people back. I guess, what are some applications or use cases that the tool has been used to bring people back into casinos or the restaurants or whatever it may be?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's actually the primary set of use cases. As we look at the usage of Lighthouse PE across our customers, it's our job is to bring people to our customers' doorsteps, right? Yeah. So we're not delivering clicks, we're delivering people to your front door, which if you're a brick and mortar, that's the most important. You can't, of course you can sell things online, but there's a lot of businesses, any kind of services business, you can't do that. You have to, bring people to your front door. So using, again, going back to the location as an expression of behavior and preference, there's a whole range of ways to use the data, from as simple as, if one of your customers hasn't been, to one of your stores in 14 days, send them something. Then you can sort of drill down on that to say, all right, well, if we're integrated with that business's CRM system, we can get very precise about what we want to send them. So if I'm a day spa and I know I have a customer in my membership program that loves hot stone massage upgrades, and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever, however they want to use that, I can send them a push at that interval to say, hey, come in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, and we'll give you a free hot stone upgrade to your massage. Those are incredibly effective. We see, upwards of 25% conversion rates on notifications, push notifications like that. Another one, which is, it sounds kind of, sleazy is not the right word, but sketchy, right? Is casinos, one of the most frequent and highest performing use cases with casinos is to geofence their competitors. And when you pull into the competitor's parking lot, you get a notification right there that says, hey, come by in the next hour for something, 30 minutes of free match play or, $20 on the slots or whatever, which again can be customized based on what we know about those players from the casino's CRM system. What we see, again, those typically 25, 30% conversion and higher on those we call them turnaround signals, which is even more incredible when you consider they've actually got to turn their car around and drive somewhere. It's a fairly considered behavior, right? It's a commitment. That one in particular, is sort of modeled after probably one of the most famous location-based marketing campaigns ever, which is the Whopper Detour. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but Burger King did this a couple of years ago. They geofenced every McDonald's. I think there were, I forget how many, 14, 15,000 stores in the US. And if you were a BK customer and you had the app, whenever you pulled into the parking lot of the McDonald's, you'd get an offer for a penny Whopper. it was immensely successful. I think they sold over 9 days something like 600,000 Whoppers. And people figured it out, right? People are smart. Yeah. So, there was definitely gaming of that offer, but who cares? You still got that customer away from McDonald's. Yep. And what was really interesting is that the CMO of Burger King said, yes, this was an incredibly successful campaign, but the way that we were able to get people to download and engage with our app because of that 9-day campaign has immense sustained strategic value, to them over time. And it was back then, I think I've actually never seen how much they spent to pull that off, but they worked with 2 different agencies and it took them a year to develop it. Wow. They integrated 6 different platforms to do it. So, the cost was in the many millions. Oh, yeah. Which goes back to sort of our point earlier about, companies with that kind of capacity can pull stuff off like that. And so really in a lot of ways, what Lighthouse PE is doing is letting, local regional restaurants or beauty spas or any kind of brick and mortar really be able to execute marketing campaigns with that same level of sophistication and that same level of targeting at, a huge fraction of the cost and time, to do that.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we're starting to see technology to where it was only accessible to the Fortune 500, the 1000s, to go more towards that smaller business. And I think it's going to be an exciting time because if it's used correctly, just enhancing the customer journey or enhancing the experience that they have with you. There's so much creativity, especially I'm just huge on the app side of things because like you said, it's you can push notifications based off of where they go, what they've been doing. And it sounds like you guys tie into a CRM as well. So there's a ton of different data from purchase data to where they visit on the website, how they've engaged on social, that if you get creative in looking at that consumer behavior, you can message so well that it almost makes them feel like they're best friends with the brand. And when you do that, that's
absolutely it. And that's what the access to that data enables us to do, which, in turn enables really any business to be able to do it. The data's there. It's just a matter of collecting and then executing against that data. And in terms of driving technology down market, it's, this is a well-worn playbook, right? If you look back in the early days of CRM, only businesses who could afford to pay Siebel millions of dollars for an on-prem system had a CRM. Everybody else used spreadsheets. Well, along came Salesforce, which was still, big and expensive and complex. But you fast forward, now I get CRM for free from HubSpot. Yep. So I think, this vertical, this mobile engagement, this highly personalized engagement through mobile devices is going to follow that same pathway. And we think we're helping push that to happen faster.
Yeah. And the beauty is with the push notifications, because where my head was at first was we'll take location data and then sell it to third parties or whatever. And then you can serve banner ads and all that to them. But there's a cost to serve that banner. With these push notifications, there's no cost. And so once you get someone onto the app, in terms of the communication, I mean, it's like email, but the open rates or the visibility, the chances to get in front of someone are tremendously higher than what email used to be. And so
absolutely. And I think even more recently, we compare ourselves to SMS marketing, right? Which is also bottom of the funnel. It's engagement and retention. It's also highly regulated like email. And like email, there's a marginal cost every time you send something. And that's the beauty of push is there's no marginal cost. So the marginal economics of being able to personalize at scale work with push. They don't work with SMS or email. And so I think we fast forward, 5-10 years, hopefully sooner. But I think, our growth is largely going to be coming from budget migrating out of channels like SMS and email. Yep. Over to, a platform like ours. Yeah,
no, I agree. Because I think the capabilities of what you can do with an app, I think the whole app thing, it was really ahead of its time. I mean, I feel like had mass adoption, then it kind of hung out for a little bit. But I think as people figure out how to use apps for their advantage. It's like we're an agency, and it's like, well, how do you think you can use an app? And it's, I mean, if we can tie it to our project management tool, the CRM to give dashboards, there's so many different applications that I think if you just get creative, you can make a great app that's going to be applicable to your customer base. And once you get them in there, in terms of the communication, it's just so much easier than all the other channels. And to your point, every text you sent out, whether it's a penny and a half, whatever it is, when you get a list of 20, 100,000, a million people, that's a big bill you got to start paying every month.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, you deliver it through an app. So I guess the next question is, if I'm a business, this all sounds great. Do I need to have an app for you guys to integrate? Or, as you mentioned, a lot of small businesses might be, a little bit behind the technology curve in terms of having an app. So how do you guys, I guess, bring a solution to that?
Yeah. So what we have done is basically built a library of we call them templates. They're almost white label apps, right? For different types of businesses that we're focused on. So for, a fast casual restaurant, or for a day spa or a med spa, or for a casino or a hotel, we've built, like I said, sort of templates that businesses can very quickly customize from a branding, from a, content perspective, but not incur sort of the big upfront cost to develop an app from scratch. And right now, we're trying to grow as quickly as we can. Right now, we're not charging businesses to use those apps. And so for us, obviously we're not in the app business, but the app is a sales enabler for us. Yeah. So we think it's a smart strategy to take as much friction out of that piece of the equation as possible, because what we're getting in return is a long-term recurring revenue customer. And that's really our approach to that. So far, I'd say from a sales funnel perspective, maybe a quarter to a third of the opportunities we see need an app. Yeah. But, going back to what are the things that have changed over the last year, right? I think that most businesses now see that, the app isn't a nice to have for their business anymore. It's a must have. When you look at the brands and the businesses that actually did better in 2020, in our target verticals, the app was really the linchpin in all of that. When you look at the data, I believe the number from 2019 to 2020, the amount of consumer time spent in apps was up 40%. Wow. From 18 to 19, it was maybe 18 or 19%. So, the growth, not only was there more, but the growth doubled year over year.
It's accelerating.
And I think, sort of the organic momentum there is demographic. But what COVID did was really, again, force that issue. And I think that there are definitely some, systemic permanent changes that in consumer behavior that are going to stay. And one of those is, people's understanding of and interest in using the app as a point of engagement with the businesses that they like.
It's amazing you guys offer that app at no cost. I mean, granted, I know you mentioned it's a template, but at the same time, you have two options. You can use the template. I mean, it's still branded to you. It's not going to look bad. Or you can go out and develop your own app, which, you haven't done so far. And if you see the price tag on that, you're going to go towards this. And I think it's a genius move because those numbers are actually a little bit lower in terms of a quarter. 33% of the people that come to you guys don't have anything. I would think that number would be higher, but that would be the biggest friction to getting the business to scale, because if you're trying to cater to the smaller business, I would assume that chances are most of them don't have an app. So it's awesome that you guys created a solution for that. Is it on the roadmap to start charging for that at all? Or, 'cause it's tough. It's they need it in order to scale this side of the revenue, but on the other side of the coin, could be leaving money on the table. Yeah. And it's weighing those two different options.
That's a great question. And the answer is a qualified maybe. Right now, like I said, our goal is to remove as much friction out of the sales process as we can. And that's a part of doing that. But over time we may decide, and part of it's also learning, this sort of, we talk about it as the app assembly line, right? Is this something that we can scale efficiently, or as we grow that population, does it start to create some friction on its own, right? In which case we probably, might have to look at attaching a cost to that. But, the flip side is, I think more and more businesses may be, sort of independently approaching the app before we get to them. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out.
No, it'll be interesting. As we've mentioned, I mean, this last year with COVID, it's kind of forced people to recreate their business and everything like that. I mean, I could see huge application for what you guys offer in terms of, even if it's a restaurant, I mean, you had a lot of takeout and needing social distancing. I mean, you could create more of a process or help with the logistics on when people are showing up, when things are available. How did you guys pivot and I guess help your clients, through the last 12 months?
Yeah, it's been an incredible 12 months. And I think the ways that we helped our customers really vary by industry, right? If we look at, travel and casino gaming, it shut down. And so, there were many months in 2020 where our customers were shut down. And so we didn't bill them while they were shut down. So that hurt us, but it was a way for us to support and maintain that customer relationship, during that really tough time. Others, like if you look at, in the restaurant space, obviously it's well known how takeout, how ordering through the app became not a more important, but the only way that, restaurants were able to, sell and engage with their customers. But I think even if we take a step back from sort of the transactional interactions, just the ability for brands to maintain mindshare and touch points when they're not together in person also has a value. We have a customer in the day spa beauty bar business that was really creative in how they communicated with their customer base while they were shut down completely, which translated into an ability to basically bounce back a lot faster than they would have otherwise been able to had they just gone dark and said, hey, after 6 months, remember us. But they, within probably a month, even though they're operating at reduced capacity still, they're based in Colorado. They were within a month back to their top line utilization targets pre-COVID. And so there's a lot of ways, but I think it just comes back to the engagement in a way that, like you said earlier, makes the consumers feel like that brand is their best friend. They understand them. And that's really the key, and that's again, it's a big difference in how brands can nurture their customer base through other channels like email or SMS. You just can't do that level of personalization at scale.
Yep. And I mean, to your point on pausing the billing on your clients, it might have hurt you in the short term in terms of cash flow, but I'm sure over the long term, it's going to be tremendous. And I'm sure that your partners appreciate it. Your clients appreciate that.
They all come back.
Yeah. Come back. And I'm sure it extended what would have been the relationship. I mean, I'm sure it would have been a long time either way, but by having that, it really shows, the partnership and we're in this together. And so in terms of the lifetime value of a customer, I'm sure it just did wonders. But the thing that I love is, staying top of mind, the really staying in front of people and doing it through, I think, an educational way. And I think another beauty I've seen from COVID is it really differentiated. There's a lot of marketers that are really salespeople, and it's all the messaging is very transactional. It's very deal oriented. And this really, you couldn't be that because you were shut down, but this gave people an opportunity to be a good marketer. Where's the education? What's the history of the company? What are the values? And if you can do a good job with the educational piece, it's going to drive sales. And I think that's what I love most about the product is most people push back on the branding, the brand awareness, the educational side of things, because it's cost per impression, cost per text, cost per communication, where you can do this. You can be very good at educating. And if you connect to your CRM and first party data, you can do wonders in terms of building that relationship, and you'll need less sales promo type of messaging, which then if you're not offering discounts, it helps their margins. And so you guys are helping tremendously build relationships, helping with margins, and ultimately helping both on the top and bottom line for businesses if they use it correctly.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of education. The onboarding process for us is really important because, by and large, we're not working with sophisticated marketers like the CMO at Burger King, right? But it's common sense, right? It's common sense to say, I want to communicate with my customers in a way that they want to be communicated with. We talk internally about sort of the differences between that sort of transactional location-based marketing and what we're doing. And, we talk about it in terms of sort of the transactional approach is a brand telling their customers something they want to tell them, right? What we're doing is allowing a brand to tell their customers something their customers want to hear. And it's a subtle, but I think really powerful difference. And again, you can't, the marginal economics and the technology are huge barriers to do that with other channels like email and SMS. And so I think as we look out over the horizon and, we play this out sort of to the extreme, Lighthouse PE could, ultimately get to a point where we never send a push to more than one person at a time, right? Because that push is only relevant to that one person at that one time. Will we ever get there? I don't know. But that's really sort of the big vision.
No, I think you put it well, I think, and that's what it should be, is there should not be this mass communication going out. Because if you're saying one thing to 1,000 people, there's not that level of personalization. I think we'll get to the point to where consumers will identify that and not want that, because it's like, well, you're talking to everyone, and I like the love. I like to feel exclusive. And I think it should be every brand's goal to get to the just one-to-one communication. There's always that seems like it's going to take a lot of time and energy. Figuring it out, it does. But once it's all automated, it's just off to the races.
That's the key. Yeah. The automation is the game changer.
Yep. One thing you mentioned, the whole onboarding process. We've had a couple other SaaS companies on here, and they've mentioned that tweaking their onboarding process has done wonders in terms of just bringing on new clients, but also the sustainability of them and the retention and everything. How have you guys gone about that, the onboarding process? What have you guys kind of learned through the months of onboarding? We're
still getting better every time, but I think that the key that we've learned is don't present a new customer with a blank slate, because that slate will likely stay blank for, longer than you want it to, which creates churn risk for us. So we'll, aside from doing sort of the typical, all right, let's walk you through and show you how to do everything, we'll also spend time with each customer getting to know and talking about, well, what are your business objectives? What are the things that you want to try and achieve? And at the outset, we'll work with them to build, we call them signals, which is a combination of the data and the criteria to trigger a message. We'll work with them to build that initial slate of signals so that, within a day or two of going live, they're already, going at full speed. And I think what we've learned is that's really the biggest key, because, like any product, and this has, been written about a ton, the faster you can get a customer to feel like they're getting value. And in our case, we talk a lot about ROI. The faster we can get a customer to feeling like they're generating positive ROI, that just cements the long-term value and really, torpedoes the churn risk. So that's a very big focus when we onboard new customers, is to make sure that, number one, we're not giving them a blank slate. Number two, we're helping them go through crawl, walk, run, as quickly as possible.
Yep. No, I love that. And I think the whole, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? I think is the best way to look at it. Because I think there's two sides. You can try and automate it and have like a train wheel in there. Let's click this and do that. but then it might not be aligned with what they're trying to accomplish. And something that we're trying to focus on internally is, instead of, hey, do you want SEO, paid media, video? It's, what are you trying to accomplish? And then we'll let you know what we think services are best for that. And I think that's the best approach. I mean, you talk a lot about automation and scaling, and one could say that kind of is the opposite of scaling, because you got to take time to, you got to listen, you got to hear, give them that template. So, I mean, how are you balancing that, knowing you guys are trying to get to full blown scalability, but also have that retention?
Well, honestly, I think those two goals are really, one and the same, or at least inseparable. We have to do that. Otherwise, our customers aren't going to spend the time figuring it out on their own, right? In many cases, we're not selling to, a director of marketing or, an IT organization. We're selling to an owner. Yeah. And that owner already has 1,000,001 other things they need to do to keep their business, running in all cylinders. And so, our ability to shoulder that early load, I think, is really key. And that's, that comes up in early sales conversations as well. That's a frequent sort of source of pushback and objection. Well, I'm not good at technology. I don't have the time. I can't learn this stuff. And so that's one of the areas where, from a sales perspective, we spend time trying to clarify so that objective goes away. That it's fire and forget. Yes, like anything, there's some investment in time up front, but after that, you reap the benefits. Yeah,
no, I agree. And it's always funny to hear that I don't have time. And it's like, well, if you're just choosing not to, but if you did take the time to learn it and understand it, it's amazing how much more time it could free up, because you'll be driving incremental sales. You have revenue to deploy for more resources, whatever it may be.
Right. And I mean, if you're go back to the beauty and wellness industry, which is one of our targets. You say you don't have the time to invest in this, but do you have the time to continue losing 50% of your members every year, right? And those are just use cases that are ideally suited to Lighthouse PE. Helping solve that, those churn issues. We have the customer I mentioned before, within 30 days, cut their membership churn in half. Wow. And we tracked that over the course of a year, and it's stayed pretty constant. So their ability to, we all belong to gyms, right? Or we have at some point in our history, and I'm sure we've all canceled our gym memberships at some point in history. Yeah. Well, what's the main reason you cancel? Because you don't go, and you look down at your bank statement one day and you say, geez, I spent $500 over the last 6 months.
Once.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice donation. But, if you were, in that case, if you were going 2 times a week, then you wouldn't even think twice about that $500. And so again, goes back to the behavioral design approach to say, if we're getting recurring payments from customers, the best way for us to continue getting them is to make sure the customers are feeling they're getting the value. And to get the value, they need to come in. And so that's what, Lighthouse PE does to help.
Yeah, no, that's great, because I think so many businesses focus on trying to get new customers, but it's the most expensive customer is a new one. Absolutely. And it's amazing what it'll do for the business from a financial perspective. If you just bring up that lifetime value of a customer, you don't have to deploy as much time and resources to acquiring new ones. And that's essentially what you guys help with. And I think so many just overlook the retention side and how to prevent churn. And I think, especially with a channel that doesn't cost for every message you go out, I mean, it's the perfect solution. It is.
And I think a lot of business owners do understand that. There's a number that gets thrown around all the time. I think it's a few years old, but, it's 5 times more expensive to get a new customer than it is to keep the customer you already have. And that's a pretty staggering statistic when you multiply that out over hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of customers. And so that's, again, going back to what we do, engagement is all we do, engagement and retention. So that's, absolutely critical.
Yeah. And I mean, we're huge on data analytics, and we're very ROI focused as well. And from that, we have a sweet little dashboard that, I mean, shows all the metrics that we kind of determine after the onboarding and everything. How are you guys delivering, I guess, the success of what all these push notifications are doing, how well it's helping with churn, and ultimately how much more money it's putting in your clients' pockets? Do you guys have something like that?
So yeah, we have a customer dashboard where they see not just all of the activity, but also the performance data. So we track conversions for every signal that gets sent. And the interesting thing is, conversions can mean different things. Unlike SEO, where a conversion is a click, right? That's you get that click. All right, we've done our job. We're done. With us, again, our job is to bring people to the doorstep, right? And so we could define a conversion as I sent a push. If that person shows up in the next week, I'm going to count that as a conversion. Or I sent a push with an offer that's only good for 24 hours. So someone that shows up 36 hours later is useless to me. Yeah. So I only want to track the people that show up within 24 hours to understand the conversions. Then when we take that and we combine that with what we know about, our customers, what's their average ticket size, right? Which, if you're a QSR fast casual restaurant, it could be $12-15. If you're a beauty bar, it could be, $100. But from there, it's super simple to say, all right, well, I counted, 100 conversions this month, and my average ticket size is $100. Well, I just, that's $10,000 in top line revenue that I just drove, with zero marginal cost for each one of those pushes. Easy sales pitch at that point. The ROI is that the mathematical ROI here is massive. Yeah. If we're not in the triple digits on ROI within a month or two, then we're not doing something right.
Well, I mean, everyone looks to email as the most profitable channel. I mean, I think it's like 44x ROI typically on email. But I mean, as you've mentioned, there's more regulation getting passed. There's less people opening email. There's more people sending email. And so I think this is the biggest competitor in terms of the channel stacking up and what's driving ROI. Because I mean, just the applications are just, I mean, my wheels are already turning. And I mean, what I would say is, how are you guys, looking in the next 3 to 6 months, what are your guys' biggest goals for the company? What are you guys trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so the biggest goal for us as a company goes back to where I started with this, which is we're going to spin this out into its own company. Right now, we're still under the agency, roof. Yeah. And that the trigger for us to do that's going to be based on growth. So, our goal will be to concurrently raise, some funding. And spin the company out. That funding goes into the new company, and it's off to the races from there. So the business has been completely bootstrapped by the agency so far. There's never been any outside capital. So this has been a commitment by the agency and the owners of the agency to fund this, because there's a belief there's a big opportunity out there to go chase with this. So Since I've been on board, I think 5.5 months now, we really spent the last quarter trying to understand what is and isn't working from a sales and customer acquisition perspective. And going into the second quarter, it really is about starting to place some bigger bets on tactics that, will hopefully start to move the needle faster for us.
From a marketing perspective, how are you guys getting it out there? There's huge applications, I think, on the affiliate side. I mean, I'm like, we have 5-6 clients that I know could use this right now. And I'd
love to meet them.
Do you have anything in the pipeline for affiliates to where if we have clients and it's a good tool, any way that we can bring them to it?
We don't in the form of a formal structured program. Yeah. We don't, but we are having those conversations. It is part of the acquisition roadmap for us, looking at what channels can we leverage to get out there more quickly than we'll be able to do from a direct perspective. Yeah. So, affiliate's going to be an important one. We think app developers, whether they're just sort of the independent shops or developers that are building vertical specific apps, online ordering apps for restaurants, booking apps for, med spas and things like that. So those are elements of the channel strategy as we grow as well.
Love it. Love it. This has been great. And as we kind of wrap up, some of the audience might be listening, go, this is amazing. I'd love to test this out. And for those that are kind of contemplating, I guess, what's the biggest piece of advice or biggest thing that you'd say to them to help set expectations if they were to reach out or move forward with, this kind of technology?
Well, I think the biggest thing I'd say is don't be afraid.
I love it. I love it. Just do it. Just do it.
Just do it. I think, again, when we're dealing with companies that aren't, in the Fortune 1000, I think fear is probably the biggest. Fear of the unknown is probably one of the biggest headwinds that we face. Part of that unknown is just the knowledge that, hey, there's actually, a product out there that can do this, that will work for you and is not going to break the bank, and you don't have to spend 2 hours a day, babysitting it. Biggest piece of advice is just go for it, because it's going to work there. You look at, again, the big brands like, Chick-fil-A, they do an awesome job with their mobile app. That's probably my favorite, restaurant, mobile app right now. Flip side, not to throw shade, but Starbucks, I get, I go into a Starbucks, buy a coffee, walk out, and I get a push notification that I'm near a Starbucks. Guess what? I turned off push notifications, which is for Starbucks, which is probably not what they want. Yeah. But again, it goes back to the value of being able to personalize. Exactly. And every time you bother me on my home screen, I feel like it's a worthwhile effort of the few seconds it's going to take me to click it and see what's up.
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind, Yelp does it really well too, where I go to Scottsdale or whatever, look at the hot new things in Scottsdale are going on. I think that's a great example that I think a lot of consumers can relate to, where it's the capabilities that you guys bring to the table for smaller businesses. I think that it's a good example. This has been great. Really appreciate you taking the time to come in.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Andrew.